one of the things I wanted to talk to her about is it's so different in India from the rest of the world we're talking about. They just, their central bank just reduced their borrowing rate from 7% to 6.75%. We're talking about the catastrophe of going up to 0.25%.
Yes,
and they
put
did
that
it,
in perspective.
And they did it because they got their inflation rate down. I mean, we're trying to get up to 2%. It's such a different phenomenon from the rest of the world.
They're becoming a bit like the great exception, India. I mean, yes. I was not a great supporter of Modi, but the combination of him and a solid central bank governor, and exactly as was just said, India is beginning to work. I don't really agree on the fiscal deficit side. I think that Indian government is still chaos. But underneath it, at least, there's bits of deregulation going on. They've brought inflation, as you were saying, a bit more under control. Things are looking good, and particularly compared with China, that age-old thing. And it may be even that big question of authoritarian government against democracy. Maybe democracy is beginning to look a little bit stronger.
I wouldn't dare weigh in against John Micklethwaite without having the data of the Bloomberg behind me. Matt, what do you have?
The Bloomberg shows us what's starting to work and why in India. So the green line here is oil prices, and the yellow line is the CNX Nifty. So that's their benchmark index of the 50 biggest companies. As oil prices come down, the CNX Nifty goes up, and with it, at least the economy for the rich people in India. Why is that? Well, if you take a look at ECTR, which is a great function on the Bloomberg terminal that shows you trade.
I love this. This is beautiful.
So we put India into ECTR and then looked at India by imports. Who are their biggest imports coming from? Well, China's the biggest, but you see Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Iraq, Nigeria, Kuwait, Venezuela, Iran. They're importing so much oil. So as the drop in oil prices continues, they are making so much more money. Their economy is doing so much better.
It is a big supporter, John, the fact that the oil prices have come down.
Yes,
for India.
I suppose my worry on India is it's like a reverse Brazil. Brazil did brilliantly when commodity prices were booming, and they did absolutely nothing to reform their government. And they had the same problems of corruption and everything, and now that's come back to hit them. India is sort of the reverse. They massively rely, for all the reasons Matt has just shown us, they massively rely on imported energy. Energy in India is a nightmare, except coal, which is a disaster by itself. But because if they have cheap energy, it's going to look great. But what happens if energy prices begin to go back up again? Is Modi going to reform government? Is he going to actually get those reforms through in a way that, to be honest, places like Brazil didn't? So it's it's almost like playing the same game, but with different numbers.
All right, I want to actually share a bit of the interview we had just a few moments ago. Take a look.
We have opened, as the banking industry, 180 million bank accounts in the last 12 months for the unbanked
80
people.
80 million bank accounts.
Yes.
That's 12 months.
And then we back it up.
That's crazy.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And then we back it up with the unique identity that the government is giving to every individual in India. And then we combine that with direct benefit transfers of subsidies. And that kind of brings in so many of these million people in the economic activity.
180 million bank accounts.
It's incredible, isn't it? And what you're seeing in India is that example of leapfrogging. Totally inefficient banking sector generally in India. But you look at that thing to do with biometric identification. There are opportunities for emerging companies, if they get things correctly, to be able to jump ahead. You don't need social security numbers if you found a biometric way of being able to measure, to tell who everybody is. Things, you look at what's happening in mobile phones in Africa, where people are making mobile banking on mobile phones because they have no alternative. Those sort of technologies can spread really quickly if they do well. And in India, the challenge, exactly as she said, has been the fact you have this very, very limited banking system, which they can now bring people in because they can identify who they are, and also some small amounts of deregulation. At the risk of bringing everything together, it's exactly what Donald Trump doesn't understand, that if you have free trade and open markets, these things happen. And it's exactly what the people in protesting about TTIP don't understand, that if all those small gains around the world come through, and a lot of people being able to have bank accounts, technology being able to spread, and the wonderful music of capitalism playing on.
You know what's great about working here? John Micklethwaite does understand all of that. Bloomberg editorial editor-in-chief.